Welcome to Kevin Deal Photography, where I take you on my journey through photography. On today's episode, we're going to be doing an in-depth review of the Inkee GC60 Video Light. Welcome to today's episode. If you're not familiar with Kevin Deal Photography, we do gear reviews, tips, techniques, and tutorials, and sometimes we dive into film. If any of that sounds appealing to you, click the subscribe button below. So Inkee reached out to me and asked me to review their GC60 Video Light. The GC stands for Gold Crow. Not really sure where that came from the marketing standpoint, but it's an interesting name nonetheless. However, I will say that the second I took this guy out of the box, I was incredibly impressed with the aluminum alloy. I'm going to be completely honest with you here. I review a lot of video lights. I review a lot of strobe lights. And I find that the build quality on them is not that great. They do a good job in putting out output, but maybe they're made of plastic and things like that. This is the same type of material as you get from a mag flashlight. I wanted, of course, to test it out as a light, which is what really matters. But first, let's go over the specs. The Inkee GC60 is a 60-watt portable video light. It's a continuous bicolor light that uses COB LEDs. It supports a Bowens mount. It has a lux rating of 3698. It has a CRI TLC rating of 96+. It has a color temperature range of 2700 to 6500 Kelvin. It has a large built-in battery which will allow you to use the light for up to 2 hours at full output. It supports 100-watt fast charging, and it only takes 2 hours to fully charge. It comes in at a weight of just 1 kilogram, and it comes in at a street price of $260 US. So all that sounds great, and the specs on it are quite nice, but let's put this light through its paces. We're going to use it on some videos, and we're going to use it on some still sessions, but let's go over our first impressions and how to operate the light. So first and foremost, it comes with this nice grip. It's that kind of NATO rail style where you have all the different threadings on there. Seems like you could integrate this into your video rig really well. You also have this screw here, which allows you to connect it to your light stand. Another thing that stands out to me, especially considering the small size of this, is the fact that it actually works with the Bowens mount. So you can see the included reflector on here, but there's this little Bowens mount lock that when you unlock this, you can take this guy out. And then there's 3 arms that open up. And as you see these little notches right here, those actually can connect your Bowens mount. You also have teeth right here, and these teeth, they allow you to point it upward. So if you're using an umbrella modifier, I would have it like this, but you can also unscrew this. And when you unscrew it, you can flip it around the other way. So when you do that, now when you grab this little pistol grip, it can tilt downward. So if you're using something like a softbox and you want to tilt downward, you simply push this button, it tilts downward, and you're good to go. Now, something I noticed right off the bat is because you have these little teeth on here, you're never going to have sag. So if you have a front heavy modifier, this is not going anywhere. It's not going to move at all. As far as the operation of this guy, as you can see, there's not any buttons anywhere. That's because they just use this twist technology on this one ring. So I'm going to show you how this guy works, and I'm just going to twist it. So as you twist it, it's locked. It's not going to do anything. So you got to twist, 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 twist until this little progress bar turns all the way on. And you may be thinking, well, that's kind of a pain, but there's a really good reason for it, because if you turn this guy up all the way to 100%, then you put it right up to like your shirt might start singeing. That's how hot it can get on the end. So if you're going to transport it on an airplane or something like that, you definitely want it to be hard to turn it on. And that's why they actually call it transport mode. They call it transport mode because you don't want to accidentally turn it on. So they make it pretty hard to accidentally turn on. And so you have to twist, 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 and then when you're done, it turns on. You'll see that progress bar go. But once you do that and it turns on, you just twist it right, and that changes it to brighter, and you twist it left, and that changes it to darker. So that's pretty easy. Then you're thinking, well, this is a bicolor light. How do you change the color temperature? So you twist it clockwise and hold, and then your color temperature comes up. pretty straightforward to use. When you get that color temperature up, all you gotta do once you get that up is start turning it left, counterclockwise, and it'll get to a warmer color temperature, a lower color temperature, and as you turn it to the right, it goes to a cooler color temperature, and that's really it. That's how you use it. Now, if you twist it to the left a little bit, you'll have mode 1, and then you twist it to the right and you have mode 2, and so on and so forth. I believe there are 12 modes on it, and that goes between all the effects like lightning and broken light bulbs and paparazzi and all that stuff if you need it. Personally, I only see myself using this light as a light in CCT mode, so I'll probably just use it solely in mode 1, but I'll still show you what the other modes look like later on in today's video. So that's really it. That's the basic operation of it. The only other thing to note is that they say it is IP rated. They say it is waterproof. Now, the IP rating that it has, it's not submergible, so do not take this and throw it in a pond. That would be a really bad idea, and I don't think you'd have a really great result. Another thing I noticed immediately off the bat is that there is a very easy readout. As you turn the intensity up and down, when you look in the upper right corner, you'll see that there is a time on there. So I have it at 2% right now, and it says that I can get 24 hours out of this. But as I turn that up and I'm at 100%, it's only saying I can get about 2 hours out of it. Now, it's at 78% right now because I did use this at a session, so if it were fully charged, you'd actually get a little bit more life out of it than that. But that's pretty cool. They tell you what the percentage is in the upper left. They tell you how many volts you're drawing in the middle. And another great thing about this is that there is an app for it, and we'll dive into the app in this video as well. So now that you have a basic overview of the Inkee GC60, let's go test this light out and see how good it actually is. So in this anamorphic video shot example, I had the light at about 15%, which is about 15 hours worth of use. I turned the color temperature down to a warmer color temperature, and I think this demonstrates that the light will do just fine for remote video use. I then tested it for stills. I used it in conjunction with my ProPhoto B10. I used it with the reflector on, camera right, and I thought it did an admirable job as a rim light, and it should, considering that 60 watts is about what you get out of a speed light. I decided to get more creative and slow the shutter speed down to try some shutter drag shots, and I'm very pleased with the way that these turned out. I then took it outdoors because I wanted to try it in an ambient environment. I wanted to match the color temperature. I wanted to fill my subject. And as you can see right here, I think that the GC60 did a fantastic job. My real world summary of this light is that for video, it passes with flying colors in almost every scenario. And for stills, it'll work on an overcast day, at sundown, and at night. All right, let's dive into the GC app. Okay, so this is a little harsh looking, but I'm just doing it to demonstrate how the app works. I also wanted to do a demonstration of the power. This is at 1% with the reflector on it, okay? So yes, that's very bright right now, but I wanted to make sure you could understand that at about a foot and a half away, at 1% with the reflector, that is incredibly bright. I could move that 10 feet away and put it up to 15%, and it would probably be super bright. So you go and find the Gold Crow GC Sync app at all your favorite app stores, and you open it up. So as you can see right here, you've got different color temperatures. So I can take it to 2700, I can take it to 6500. So here, 2700, that is a very warm look. 6500 is a very cool look. You've got variable color temperature here, so you can take it from 2700. You also can control things like the fan. You can take it 10% at a time, which I'm not going to do because I'm going to blow my face off. And finally, the effects. You have a flash mode, a lightning mode, a television mode, a broken bulb mode, an SOS mode, a paparazzi mode, and many more. I personally don't use this light for the effects. I use it for the CCT mode, but I wanted to show you that there were effects in this light in case you were interested. So now that I've shown you how to use the app, let's talk about my final thoughts on the GC60. So now that I've had some time with the Inkee GC60, what are my thoughts? Well, I have many. There are some pros and there are some cons, but before I continue, I want to tell you that even though Inkee gave me this light for review, I want my review to be completely independent. The opinions you're going to hear today and have heard up to this point are my own, and so as I dive into these pros and cons, these are just my honest opinion. So, Let's start with the pros of this light. The light is bright, the light is color accurate, the light is easy to use. So I like to use this Godox ULC60 with a lantern as my key light for this channel. It's a 60 watt light, and the GC60 is also a 60 watt light. So I'm gonna flash both lights at 50% on the screen right now, and you can see how accurate the power is. Now, if you do see variance there, it could be because they use slightly different slopes, but as you can see from these shots, they're pretty darn close. So the pro there is that the light gets very powerful, and it's very accurate to lights that plug into the wall that are 60 watts, and so there's no suffering in quality because it runs on a battery. I've already talked about how great the build quality is on this. It's basically like a mag flashlight that you see a police officer carry. It is incredibly robust, and if you smack somebody on the head with it, you knock them out cold, so don't do that. But that is how robust this light is. The operations on it were incredibly simple to use. Another thing I liked, they actually put the threading on all 4 sides. So if for whatever reason you want to attach the handle or something else to one of these threads, you can do that. Speaking of threading, the handle has a lot of threading on it, and I'm sure these holes are actually put there as a weight-saving tool to make the overall unit weigh less, but they decided to also put threading in there so you could attach this to your video rig or attach accessories to this, and so that was very well thought out by Inkee, and I gotta give them credit for that. Another thing that I like about this light is that it's possible to store this light with the handle attached and the included reflector attached in the included bag. I think the choice to include this small reflector was a good one, and then simply extend out these arms and connect a Bowens mount to it, which of course means that you can now connect plenty of modifiers to it, and they even included this little lock to make sure that your modifier doesn't fall out. I think more manufacturers should look at this longer style of design with the more narrow diameter and the expanding accessory for the Bowens mount. I think this is really smart, and I think some manufacturers who are hopefully watching this video can take note that there's a different way to do things, and it becomes more practical and easier for the light traveling photographer. So I did say in the specifications area that it charges in just 2 hours from 0 to 100%, and the reason why it happens so fast is because they give you this really nice charger. This is basically a MagSafe charger that you'd have for a MacBook Pro, and they're including it with this light. And speaking of power, the reason why this thing is so long and a little heavy is because this is an incredibly large battery. And with that comes very long battery life. You can have this 60 watter at 100% for a couple hours. If you take it down to 50%, now it's 4 or 5 hours. If you're using it at 15%, which if you're using it with the included reflector, 15%, you'll get like 15 hours out of this light. And 15 hours is a full day's work. It's almost 2 full days work. And then of course it's only 2 hours to charge it. So the fact that this thing can run for so long, that is definitely under the pros. Now, I already talked about how the Bowens mount was a pro. Now, some of you may be watching this and going, yeah, but I have some pretty heavy modifiers. Here's why that's not an issue. Unlike most lights, all my strobes, all my continuous video lights that I own, they all have a variable articulation on it. This does not have a variable articulation. This has a stepped articulation, so there's teeth on here. So if I try to pull this down, nothing happens because there's teeth on here. So let me just grab a random light that I have. Hold on. So most video lights, when you push down on the front of them, they start sagging. And that's because even though you tighten this as hard as you can, it still sags. And that's a characteristic of a lot of lights out there. Some people may argue that a variable swivel is better than a step swivel, but I disagree because what good is a variable swivel if once you get it to where you want to get it to, it starts sagging? It's not where you wanted it to go in the first place. At least with something that's stepped that can't be moved, it's going to stay put. And lastly, for the pros, I love the fact that it's IP rated, the fact that I can take it out into the rain, the fact that I can take it out into a dust storm, and it's gonna be okay, but that comes with a caveat, and now let's talk about the cons. The caveat is that there's this really tiny little cover for the USB-C. And the USB-C is how you charge the unit. So you could be the type of person who's like, well, I'll just never take this off. Well, no, you will take this off because you have to charge the unit. So you have to take this little guy off to charge the unit. And of course, when you're charging the unit, you might put it down somewhere and forget about it and then go take it onto a shoot. And you're like, oh man, I don't have that USB-C cover. Where is it? And then, maybe it's somewhere in your house. Or maybe it falls out in your bag, and of course most people's lining in their bags are black, and then this thing falls out. Now apparently they do give you an extra one of these, but I'm going to lose this at some point. I'm going to lose the extra one at some point. So at some point, this light is not going to be IP rated, truly IP rated anymore. And this is something super easy to combat. And if you're watching Inkee, all you have to do is take note from how cameras do it. So this is a Canon R50, but it could very well be a Sony or a Nikon or whatever. And what happens is as you go to these ports on the side and you open these up, these little pieces of rubber have a little anchor inside of them. So that little anchor that you see inside of it is always connected to the camera. So as I open this port, it doesn't matter if it's open, it stays connected to the camera. And if you did that to the back of this unit with the USB-C port cover, which now I don't even know where I put it. Oh, there it is. See, that's my point, is I couldn't even find it because it's so tiny and it's easy to miss because it's so dark. And so in a future version, I would like to see Inkee put this inside the GC60, maybe on the Mark II version. And then that leads me to my last point. I fawned over the grip to talk about how amazing it is, but there is one flaw to the grip. Even though I love the fact that it's stepped and all that, and you have the teeth, that's awesome. But here's the problem. You can only swivel it 90 degrees. So if I'm using a softbox, I would probably have it in this configuration, right? Okay, but I want to use an umbrella. Okay, well, how do I do that? Because I'm using a rear-facing umbrella. I need to shoot the light that way. Well, while you can, and this is not that big of a con, but it is a con, you have to take it off, turn it around, put it back on, and now I can use a rear-facing umbrella. A smarter decision would have been to have had it swivel 180 degrees, and then that way I could just point it in whatever direction I needed to. And then, of course, if you are using a softbox and not a rear-facing umbrella, and you want to store this guy in its bag, it's not going to store unless you have it in the rear-facing umbrella position. So if you have it configured like this, where it could work with a rear-facing umbrella, it'll store in the bag. But if you have this turned the other way, it's going to stick up and it won't fit inside the bag. So if you want to use this with a softbox, every time you use this with a softbox or a front-facing modifier, you're going to have to turn this guy around to store it in the bag. So those are the cons. There's not a lot of cons, and none of those cons are deal breakers. In fact, all of the cons that I've talked about, they could easily update it in the next version. They just simply have to make that USB-C port not detach, and then they just have to make a swivel that goes 180 degrees. Those are really the only two faults I could find with it. I would also say maybe the screws are a little flimsy, and I do find that sometimes the light mount screw, it falls out a little easy. So those are minor cons. And of course, if you lose these, trying to find a new one might be a little problematic. And then my suggestion to Inkee, if they want to corner the market, is I would recommend that they give you the ability to overclock, not just as a continuous light, but allow you to use this light as a flash, where you can maybe quadruple the output for a very brief time, you know, a 5,000th of a second, like a normal flash, to where it's just a modeling lamp. It'll get bright. There are already manufacturers like Rotolights and Stella Pro who do this, but their products are over $1,000. And the Stella Pro, you can't even flash stuff in bicolor. Everything is daylight balanced. So if you could flash, 5,600 Kelvin, 2,700 Kelvin, 6,500 Kelvin, and anywhere in between, that would make this light a game changer for the market, especially at its price point. That does it for today's episode. I thank each and every one of you for watching today. If you like what you saw, tell me about it in the comments below. If you want to get your Inkee GC60, I'll put a link in the description below. I thank each and every one of you for watching today. If you like this channel, I humbly ask you to click the subscribe button below. And if you like the discussions I have on this channel and you want to hear my opinions more in depth on photography and videography related subjects, I highly recommend you go check out my other YouTube channel, or you can go to Apple and Spotify to check out the F11 Photography Podcast. I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.